What happens when law, business, and life collide? Each week on Lead Counsel, your host Tom Tona will take a deep dive into topics related to the law, the business of law, and life. There will be insightful discussions with industry insiders, experts, and thought leaders making significant contributions and meaningful differences in their fields of expertise. Tom is the founder and managing attorney at TonaLaw. He has been a practicing attorney since 1994 and the leader of TonaLaw since it opened in 2001. The goal of this podcast is to provide you with free information on law and the business of law, and to give you actionable tools related to each of these areas. Now, here's Tom.
Hey, welcome back to the Lead Counsel Podcast. Your host, Tom Tona. Before we jump into today's topic, I just want to take a minute to thank the sponsors of the podcast. This episode is sponsored by TonaLaw. They're not just another law firm. They're defining what it means to fight for their clients. We get a lot of attorney referrals from across the country. We pay fee participation in all jurisdictions where it's permitted. We focus on integrity, innovation, and relentless advocacy. TonaLaw is proving that the business of law can scale without losing its heart. If you want to see how a modern firm is built for impact and happy client referrals, check out TonaLaw.com. Mention again the Lead Counsel Podcast, and I'm happy to get on the phone with you. This episode is brought to you by Meet Gabby, the voice AI built for law firms. Gabby answers your phones 24/7, qualifies leads, and books consultations so you never miss another client. Imagine cutting intake time in half or giving every caller a 5-star experience. That's the power of Meet Gabby. Learn more at meetgabby.com. Mention the Lead Counsel Podcast. You can also hit me up, and I'm glad to make an introduction to the owner. I have a returning favorite of mine on the show today, Marco Brown. What's up, Marco? How are you?
I'm doing well, man. How you doing, Thomas?
Very good, very good. So I normally will introduce people and say, oh, it's Marco from Utah. But the reason why I wanted to have you on was specifically you opened up a second office, right? You're now multi-state. I love that idea. I had told you the last time we talked, it was kind of in my growth plans. So I really want today's episode to focus on crossing state lines and what you did to expand your family practice, your divorce practice to Arizona. There's a lot of people that are planning this, right? Another buddy of ours, John Hawkins, and I were talking about it. And for me, for some reason, it's been daunting mentally to try to figure out the licensing aspect and all of that. So first off, what made you decide to expand from Utah to Arizona?
So I have done more divorces than anybody in the history of the state of Utah at this point. And I was just working up those numbers the other day. So that's good. And believe me, like that has created a really nice life for me and my family. And I love it. I love what I do. I love serving people. I love the money that goes along with it, the whole bit. But you and I are driven people and we get bored with stuff. And I've done this like 5,000 times and cool, I can do it another 50,000 times and make a whole bunch of money. But, I want to be engaged on kind of another level. So this was a puzzle. And I thought, all right, let's go like put the puzzle together and figure out how to do this because almost no one does it, at least at PI, obviously much more, but your numbers are astronomically high. So you can do that sort of thing. But in family law, almost nobody's done it with the exception of Joe Cordell. I thought there's got to be a reason and let's go figure out what the reason is and do it anyway. High barrier for entry means that there's a huge amount of money on the other side and a huge amount of service to people on the other side.
Yeah, and I know you did a lot of background checking, but before we even get to that, was there a specific moment or trigger that made you commit to that decision?
I remember telling myself that I wanted a multi-state law firm and even a national law firm a long time ago. And then I started working with Grant Cardone's team on expansion and scaling. And then we had put together kind of a roadmap to make that happen. I think it's been in the works in my head for a long time. And then it's just kind of a slow progression from that initial idea. But it's been years.
Look, and again, that's kind of the build for me, right? Like we are very similar that way. So I'm super hungry still. Somebody who's like, do you find yourself less hungry at this point? I'm like, no, I'm more hungry. Because now I know the formula for servicing more people and maintaining some quality, right? So I am just as hungry as I ever was, if not hungrier. And that's why I wanted to get you on. So you were working with Cardone's team. You guys developed a vision or a roadmap for this to blueprint it out before you pulled the trigger, yeah?
Yes.
And what did that look like? What did that roadmap look like? As granular as you want to get.
So it was really like 10 years in the future. What do you want this to be? And for me, that was 75 million in revenue. And then about 10, that would require, and then you just back the math out from there. So it probably required 10 to 12 different jurisdictions or states to be able to do that. And this number of attorneys, which is about 300, and this number of clients and so on and so forth. So really it's like, okay, this is the thing. And then you just back out the math from there. And then you can timeline it knowing that your expansion is always going to be slower in the beginning than it will later on because you learn things and you learn how to accelerate it over time.
And you did an extensive amount of research. I remember you touched on it very briefly when we last spoke because we were kind of just getting to know each other. Talk about the market research that you did as you were fleshing out this plan.
It's interesting. So the market research, there are kind of two ways to do this. If you're just a straight mercenary, then like a Joe Morgan, as far as I can tell, which, all props to Joe Morgan, but the dude's a mercenary.
John Morgan? Oh, you mean John Morgan?
John Morgan. Sorry.
John Morgan. Yeah, no, it's okay. It's okay.
So if you're just a straight mercenary, you're just going to go find kind of whatever market is the best, no matter what, right? Like which is going to have the highest returns and the barrier for entry and so forth. And it just depends on who you are. But I didn't really do that because, for instance, I could make probably an exceeding amount of money in California, but I wish to have absolutely nothing to do with that dumpster fire of a state. I just don't. I don't like their politics. Like I named my second kid after Anton and Scalia. It's not my joint, right? So I don't like their politics. I don't like their monetary policy. I don't like any of that kind of tax policy. I don't like any of that kind of stuff. So I actually said, all right, these states, California, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, these sorts of states.
I was waiting for New York. I was waiting for you to throw New York in there.
Golly, you got such freaking weird divorce laws in New York, man.
The whole state, the politics are kind of all over the map,
Yeah.
So.
And right now, you're about to literally vote an avowed communist in as mayor of New York.
It's got a lot of eyeballs on the news lately. Let's put it that way, anyway, for sure.
I just didn't want to have anything to do with that. So I identified states that I thought I wanted to get into. And then also geographically, like states kind of around me that I could get to fairly easily so I could get home and be with my wife and kids, right? So when you think about expansion, you really need to think like, okay, again, I could just be a mercenary, or I can do what I think is sustainable for me and my team. And that's what I chose. And I think that's the smarter way to go about it.
Right. It's also, there's an investment cost, I should say, but it's not just money, it's time, right? So despite the fact that you've built it as a business, to me, they still need to see the owner whose name is on the door. They need to see you. It might be once a month until you get your team up and running, you know what I mean? Or twice a month, whatever. So yeah, basically it sounds like you were very intentional with proximity to the office by flight, that type of stuff, right?
Yes.
Did you do socioeconomic demographics like high income area versus lower income areas?
Yeah, absolutely did. So for example, in Arizona, that was one of the things that we looked at quite a bit. So we put our office kind of in the center. And actually, I think this is a mistake I made now looking back on it. But we put the office kind of in the center of Mesa, Gilbert, and Chandler, which are kind of, they're cities, but they're suburbs of Phoenix, essentially, right? In that huge valley they have. So we had looked at that and we thought, all right, where can we put it such that we can amalgamate people from all of those different geographic areas and they'll come to the office and so on and so forth. So we did that. And I think that's a good plan. And you have to look at the socioeconomics of the whole thing because you don't want it to be in some really low rent garbage, city, for lack of a better term. Like you want to make some money, right?
Right.
And you want to serve your client, and we charge a lot of cash. So we had to find that. So you got to go find those zip codes essentially, and then get into those zip codes. Now, one of the mistakes that I've made is I look at the location now and I put it too centrally located. So it's in Mesa, and really I should have put it in either Chandler or Gilbert because I didn't understand that people would drive farther distances in Phoenix, in that Phoenix Valley, than they do here in Utah, right? Because here in Utah, it's like 10 miles. You're not going outside 10 miles.
Right.
To get a divorce attorney. But they're so used to driving that they'll drive 30 minutes, 40 minutes for pretty much anything. And I just didn't realize that about the culture. So I put the office in the wrong spot.
That's one of the things that actually spurred me to reach out to you because, we're very similar. We're open about a lot of the same things, wins and losses, what I've done wrong, where the losses come, because I never want to paint a picture that's not 100% authentic. And in addition to the two mistakes you already talked about, were there any other mistakes or incorrect assumptions that you started to uncover as you did the process?
Yeah. So I think one of the big ones was on the marketing side, I could essentially do the same thing that I did in Utah and just replicate it and do it down in Arizona. And that's partially true and then wholly not true. So it works to a certain point, but we ended up doing what we did in Utah. We ended up getting very different sorts of leads in Arizona. And I didn't react fast enough to that and get the data that I needed to make the switch quick enough and say, okay, like these are lower quality leads, what we're doing. So we need to switch it up to target specifically higher quality leads so we can kind of get to the same place that we're in Utah. And we're doing that now, but I didn't do that for about the first, essentially 10 months. And that was a big mistake. Like that's something as we go into other states now, like we will have that data at the ready from the beginning. And we're just going to adjust and adjust and adjust and like, and niche down constantly. So that's one of the mistakes. And that I think is a really super important one, because if you don't do that, you're going to throw a lot of cash at advertising, thinking it's going to work the same way. And it's just not going to work the same way. The other is really underestimating how difficult it's going to be to figure out the differences between how you run cases. Okay. So, in Utah, we have a culture of mediation when we are in divorce cases. So 99% of our cases get done through mediation, and maybe 15% of our cases ever see the inside of a courtroom because we just don't need to. Like we take care of our stuff here. In Arizona, vastly different. And I realized when I had to can my lead attorney down there, which I did about a month and a half ago, that I didn't realize how the cases actually ran. I had kind of a general idea of how they did things, but then I had to go in, and we had a newer attorney in there now, and we had to build out how we were going to run cases, right? And we just knew that in Utah, that flow and the rhythm and everything else, and we just hadn't taken that time to figure that out in Arizona.
So basically the workflow system, right? The operational system. So that leads me to a question that I was going to ask you, because I know you're big and you're growing. Do you have a C-suite leadership team or any C-suite executives versus middle management leadership team?
We have an executive team, which is me, and then my, for lack of a better term, a CLO. So it's the head attorney who's over legal. And then office manager who's over sales and does some of the HR and that kind of thing. And then a head paralegal.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then I also have a tech guy who does tons and tons of the back end stuff and helps with advertising and so forth. So that's the team.
Okay. And that's basically the team that's helping you set up both offices, basically. So you make the decision, you're learning these lessons as you go. And one of the things that's been kind of the aha moment for me, I know what's holding me back, which is what are the key legal and bar admission hurdles that you faced, and how did you overcome those?
Well, one of the reasons I chose Arizona specifically, my mom lives down there, which is one of the things, and it's like an hour flight. And culturally, it's the South, but it's still that kind of Intermountain West feel. It's a lot of open space. So there's a lot of things that carried over or that crossed over. One of the big reasons is they got no rules. So anybody can own a law firm down there, right?
That's true. ABS, right? ABS.
I'm not an attorney down there right now. I'm getting barred. And that's, again, we're talking about this, but that's one of the mistakes I made. I didn't get barred, but I could own the law firm and I could just kind of do it from day one. So that was great. You need to do that research. Your side of the country, I think, what is it? DC is the only one that allows that sort of thing.
DC, I heard there was another one that just opened up ABS, but then a bunch of states are passing at the state level, making it illegal. Right?
Yeah.
They're gunning for the ABS structure. I've been in talks with my ethics guy because I use Jeff Cunningham, who you probably know from LinkedIn. He's a wizard on the ethics side, and he's also part of a multi-state firm, right? Mm-hmm. They threw together this massive defense-oriented conglomeration, which I normally don't ever work with defense attorneys as closely as I work with him because he is my ethics guy, so he's my defense lawyer.
Yeah.
So you really didn't have to jump through a lot of those hurdles at the regulatory level because of Arizona and the basics that non-lawyers are owning firms right now. So that's super interesting.
Yeah. And I made that decision specifically because I knew that this first go around was just going to be a dumpster fire. Like I was going to figure it out, but I was going to make a huge amount of mistakes and I didn't need to make ethics mistakes, right? Like I didn't want to do that. So that was kind of the initial idea. But as we're looking at things and becoming a little more sophisticated, then we're really like, that's one of the very first things I do. If I look at a jurisdiction, I go there, I physically go there and I meet with the ethics attorneys and I ask all my questions.
Okay.
Right? Because you sit down with them and you can do it over the phone. That's fine. I got a lady in Arizona I've never actually met and I've just done it on the phone. But in, say, Idaho, where we're going to go next, like I literally just drove up there and met with the attorneys and I met with the general counsel for the bar and asked a whole bunch of questions too. And that's really nice because you get to ask culture questions because there are the rules in the ethics world, but then there's the culture of the attorneys and how they interact with the ethics rules too. Right. So in Texas, there are a whole bunch of rules. And as far as I can tell in Texas, like a lot of them just the culture is they just don't care, surrounding advertising specifically. And you're never going to know that unless you actually sit down with these people and pay them. And it's always easier to do it face to face.
Right. I think that that's brilliant advice because, again, I do have Jeff, who's a local New York ethics lawyer. And I got to figure out demographically where I want to be. And then once I decide where I'm going to be, getting those ethics meetings set up to kind of figure out the lay of the land, get an opinion letter, and just execute on what they tell me. What's behind the decision? Because the idea of taking another bar exam is just not something I'm interested in. Why the decision now to go get barred in AZ and or Idaho if you go in Idaho?
The decision comes down, and I'm not going to take another bar. Like I could get into Vegas. I'd love to get into Vegas.
Right.
But I won't because I'd have to take another bar. They're kind of like Hawaii. They just don't want the Californians, so they don't let anybody in.
Right.
And if you paid me $1 million right now, I wouldn't take another bar because I just hate it. And it's just
right. Me too. Like there's just no desire to do that. And it's kind of a ridiculous, arbitrary protectionist thing, right? Like why can't lawyers cross state boundaries to do business in other states? I mean, it's just, now there are states where there's comity, right? But I'd have to look into which ones there are with the New York bar because I'm not taking another one.
Yeah, I think you have good reciprocity with New York, if I remember correctly.
You do, except for like a state that I would go to, like Florida, I don't. So it's Florida's kind of wild. Yeah.
It's like anybody. So really the reason that I decided to get barred at this point, and I don't have to take another bar in Arizona, I can just do character and fitness, is that it makes it easier to advertise. Because otherwise, if you don't, then you have to say, I'm an attorney, but I'm not really an attorney. And you have to explain all these things.
Right.
And that's fine. Like you can set up a system where you do that kind of stuff. But here's the deal. If you ever don't do that on an advertisement online or in print or whatever, and somebody that is your competitor sees it, they're going to turn you into the bar. Right. And so that's the ethics part that really kind of keeps me up at night. I don't ever want to have to deal with that. So I thought, all right, fine. I'll just get barred down there and I won't run cases, but I'll get barred and then I can advertise all I want. And, if you're not barred, you can't even do intakes. You can't give any sort of legal advice or anything like that in intakes. There are just some logistical items that make it nice to get barred in the state if you're going to do it. Now you can, like if you're in 10 or 12 or 15, you can't. But in the beginning, I think it's probably a better idea that you do.
Well, look, I mean, one of the things I've considered is who do I trust enough to partner up with where they're the license. I can put the business side to work, the resource side to work, and we're partners on it, right? I know that that's a popular way of working it as well. Although you still run into the same restrictions where you may run into advertising restrictions or stuff like that, depending on the jurisdiction, which is, again, it just becomes a really cumbersome thought process. So I guess I got to put a lot of homework into it before we jump down that road. So when you're building the team, right, you and I have had long conversations offline about the approach to recruiting in general at this point. Did you do the recruiting for Arizona on your own in the beginning?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And did you set it up as basically the cases will be in, we're going to set it up with what we know works for us in Utah? Did you set it up like a pod structure with an attorney, paralegal, legal assistant? What did you set up?
So this is where I made the biggest mistake. One, trying to do all the recruiting on my own without getting an agency to help me out because I know the attorney, I know the players in Utah, right? But I don't know the players in Arizona. So I'm going in cold, trying to find somebody, hire someone as an employee / partner in this thing, but I don't know anybody there. And it's like, I put stuff on Indeed and asked people and so on, but it didn't really function. So I didn't do that. When we do it again, we will engage a recruiting agency months in advance and really go through the homework of trying to get everybody and find that perfect attorney and that perfect partner down there. So that was the biggest mistake I made, and one that I will absolutely not replicate at all. And the other mistake after that was I just hired the attorney, and then the paralegal, we used a paralegal from Utah to kind of, duct tape the thing until we got a paralegal in the state that could work on the cases. And that was a big mistake. If you're going to make the investment in an attorney and a paralegal.
Right.
And really just do that, especially that paralegal. That paralegal is the person who makes the thing go. Yeah. And I really should have hired the paralegal even before the attorney, to be honest with you, because they're the ones that make the machinery just function.
Right. And by the way, I'll throw you out a little secret because I know who you're using for recruiting. They'll do a package deal. I mean, they've placed for me paralegals, legal assistants, attorneys, and, I don't talk about them much on here because they're kind of a secret weapon, even though I've had them on here before. But again, I love where your head's at because you're like, for me, it's the same as if I get another 100 files in, I'm just getting another pod together, right? I know the cost of the pod. I have to learn the ropes and the salaries in the different jurisdictions. But so again, like that's a valuable lesson for anybody that's listening to this, especially because a lot of people do hourly. You're hourly, right? You're not flat fee.
Yes, we do.
Right.
Hourly.
So like I'm thinking about somebody I know who would listen to this where easily when you're hiring, don't just hire the lawyer, hire the paralegal because they are the engine. You'll get the cases signed up, but the lawyers don't know a lot of the stuff that sets stuff up, tease it up for the lawyers, right? That's where a really experienced paralegal comes in. So yeah. I love that. That's, very actionable advice, I think, for anybody that's listening to this. Right now, are you managing splitting time between Arizona and Utah? How much time are you in Arizona versus Utah right now?
So I go down, again, I had to can my guy about 6 weeks ago. So I spent 4 weeks. I would go down every week. So I did 4 days and 3 days and 3 days and 2 days, that sort of thing. Right now, the cadence is really twice a month. So I'll fly in in the morning. I do the day, and then I can fly out that night. So that's a big deal. Next week, I fly out Monday morning, and I'll come back on Tuesday because I'm going to meet I'm doing networking as well there. So I'm meeting with a whole bunch of people, realtors and other attorneys and so forth. So that's really my cadence. I will get it down to once a month where I go in for a day or possibly 2. And that's where I think I want to keep it with the offices going forward. Now, there's only so many of those. You could do maybe 3, maybe 4 of those if your family's really understanding and you're doing that once a week, but that gets old pretty quick. So I got to figure out a way to make the initial time investment and then do it like once every 2 months or something, but we'll figure that out. But there's another mistake I made is I didn't have enough FaceTime in the beginning when I opened it up to set the culture and the expectations and the quality control and so forth. So my executive team and I have talked about this. The next time we open one, we're going to get our people together. And then when we open, essentially the executive team and I are just going to move there for 2 weeks.
Right.
We're going to be there for 2 weeks. And then we're just going to be all commies about everything. Like culture is X, quality control is X. And it's just going to be a hard set from the beginning for a couple of weeks, and then we can kind of back off. But you just need that FaceTime, and you need more of it than I ever thought would be necessary.
Right. Listen, again, this is all lessons, right? Like I love talking to you about this stuff because I'm correlating a lot of the same stuff I learned, even just sitting in my New York office, right? Mm-hmm. Are you on EOS by any chance? Do you run any kind of like scaling up or EOS? I will tell you that it was instrumental in giving us that structure, right? And there's holes with EOS. I talk about it a lot now. They don't describe the difference between middle management and C-suite management. True C-suite management and middle management will allow scalability for that type of stuff where you may have somebody who's managing the Arizona office and then somebody who's managing the Idaho office, but they're like middle management. It's probably not even office management level. It's like one level up and just shy of C-suite, right? Director of operations or whatever it is. And that won't require a ton of FaceTime at that point.
Yeah.
The way Jen Gore described when she was acquired by Sweet James, She described them as like SEAL Team 6. They had an acquisitions team. They drop them in for 30 days. In 30 days, everything's rebranded. Everything is, Brown family law. Everything is, this is the culture. This is the system. Here's the software. And then after that, they extricate. They go on to their next opening, right? So you'll get there. It's just a matter of the next iterations of what you're doing and building. I mean, you already have the idea for it, right? You're saying 2 weeks. You may discover you need another 2 weeks after that or whatever. Maybe 2 weeks is enough too, because it's immersive. You know what I mean? You're bringing your whole team in. Quick break to thank Meet Gabby, the voice AI that answers your phone, screen leads, and books consults 24/7. They'll even send out retainers if the person on the other end of the phone asks for a retainer. If intake is slowing you down, check out meetgabby.com. This episode is supported by TonaLaw, a modern law firm built on integrity and innovation. Learn how they're changing the game at TonaLaw.com. Attorney referrals accepted from across the country. You'll see what it's like when you send us a case. You'll have some happy clients. So you talked about the marketing strategy differences between Arizona and Utah. And I know that the law is specific to this, especially among other lawyers. It's an old boy network, right? You know what I mean by that. It has nothing to do with sex. Yeah. It has nothing to do with men versus women or anything else. It is, you are either an insider or you're an outsider. Yep. You walk into my court in Suffolk County and you're from Manhattan, you get old boyed. You don't know it's coming, but it happens. And so did you see any of that when you got into the new jurisdiction? And, do you feel that your Utah brand helped or hurt at first because they viewed you as an outsider or anything like that?
I don't think with the attorneys, it's mattered at all. I mean, I hired a local and that kind of helped. I mean, like I said, I had to fire him. It wasn't performing. But I have a new attorney in there now, and I don't feel that she gets home courted at all. Arizona might be, a little more open than other states in that way. I just don't think they cared. It was the quality of attorney. But to your point, like you do need a local, right? You can't look, if I'm opening in Georgia, right? And I want to open in Atlanta, I'm not going to go get somebody from outside Atlanta to come in and run the office. No, like I'm going to hire somebody in Atlanta to run that office because they're going to know the players. They're going to be able to network with other attorneys. The judges are going to treat them as one of their own. Like that just makes a lot of sense. So whatever geographic area you decide you want to hire in, hire somebody from that geographic area. And don't do this stupid play where it's like, oh, hey, I'm in Connecticut, so I'm going to do all of Connecticut. No, you're not. You're going to do one city in Connecticut. And then maybe you get to other places, but don't be arrogant and think you're going to take over Connecticut. Like that's a bad play in marketing and logistics and everything else. Yeah.
It's funny because I was researching online and I saw you're doing well on Google reviews. How many clients are you guys up to now, if you don't mind me asking? Like how many Arizona clients are currently active with Brown Family?
Yeah. So I think it's around 35, if I'm not mistaken, 35. I think at the high point, we had about 50, but we're really hurting in the marketing, right? Because for whatever reason, and this is another thing too, your marketing will just be different in different states and it will go through different cycles. Like, your cycles in New York for client acquisition and leads and so forth, because you've done this for so long, right? You just kind of know. I know in Utah, when there are going to be lulls, that happens at Thanksgiving through the end of December, like part of 1 month in the summer. Like I just know that because I've done this for 15 years now. In Arizona, you don't know those cycles. And when things go wrong with Google, and they will, whether it's local service ads or PPC.
Always.
You know how to work it in New York because you've done it. Like, I don't know how to work it in Arizona. I can't figure out exactly what's going on down there. So now we're in this, like, how do we figure that out? How do we get leads back to where they should be and the quality and so forth? But I underestimated how difficult that side of things would be. And it's about 10 times harder than I thought it would be.
Client acquisition.
Yeah, just the marketing and figuring out the differences in client acquisition, the whole thing. It's just harder than I thought because I didn't remember how hard it was in the beginning, right? You're starting over. You're literally starting over because Google, think about it this way, Google doesn't know who you are in the new state. Until you get to the point where you are John Morgan, and then they just know that you're or James or something like that. Like they know, like great, or you're Glenn Lerner, like they get that, but you're not that. So you're one dude in one state and you go to a second state and they're like, I don't know who you are. I don't really care. Like you're just like every other startup and you have to pay the price. And that price is way harder than you remember it.
Right. Well, that's the thing, because it comes easy to you when you've been 15 years in the same spot, right? It comes easy to you and you do forget what it was like in the beginning. So, and how long has it been open in Arizona?
About a year.
Okay. And how are you feeling with the direction it's going? I mean, it's going in the right direction. You're heading towards profitability. You feel good about it?
Yeah. With personnel, I'm really pleased now. I'm much happier about it. Profitability, yes, we're getting there. Leads and client acquisition, not at my standard at all, but we'll figure it out.
All right. Is there overlap, before I get to the final questions or anything, is there overlap where you don't need a second website? You can just advertise Utah and Arizona on the same website? Or do you need two separate websites too and two separate marketing things?
This is a really good subject. So this is a mistake we made, and we're making a lot of wholesale changes in the advertising department. Let's put it that way. Our current SEO, they sold us on two websites, actually three, because we have one for Idaho as well. So they said it's going to be easier, blah, blah, blah. And come to find out, as we've talked with higher level people, absolutely not. You don't want to do that. You want to do the one, and you want to do it exceptionally well and then build it out differently. And you can tell this is true. And this is, again, a huge mistake I made. I didn't go to the big guys and figure out how they did it. So I did this when we decided we were trying to figure out if we were going to consolidate down to one or keep the three. I just went to Morgan & Morgan, and I went to Glenn Lerner, and I went to these people that have big multi-states and said, all right, how are they structuring their websites and their SEO? And I looked through it, and none of them were doing multiples. They were all doing one, but they were building it out exceptionally well. Then I thought, okay, I'm just going to rip off how they're doing it, because obviously the way I'm doing it is just not functional. So on that specific question, you should have one, and then you should have an SEO team and a website team that knows how to do multi-state, because they've done it before for other people. And if you don't have that, fire those people and get someone who's good at it and who's done it before.
Yeah, that's good advice, man. It's good advice. You've given me a lot, right? And you've given the listeners a lot, because you've talked about everything you learned the hard way, right? The most expensive lessons we learn are, they're the best ones you learn, because when it costs you money, you never repeat it. If you're like me anyway, I'm the same way. I know I'm not going to repeat something that cost me a lot of money. What was one expected benefit to now going into the second state? What do you see as an unexpected benefit?
Well, I get to tell people I own law firms now, in the plural, which is kind of cool. I mean, that is kind of neat. I think the really unexpected benefit is it forces you to become a different person, and it forces you to think through problems you never thought you would have to, because you just didn't know what you were going to do, what was going to happen. And then all of this stuff breaks and you have to do it. It's like in the beginning when you started, you had to become a different person and think through these problems. And it's just that on steroids. Right. And then as you go into 3 and 4, you get better at it, but you're still going to have to answer questions that you never even thought of. Stuff's going to come up, and it's going to create within you a different person. If it doesn't break you, it's going to make you into something completely different. I expected that on a smaller scale, but not on the scale that I've run into.
Well, look, again, you use the word scale. Everybody talks about scale, right? Economies of scale and problems at scale. One of the things that I've realized, I've been doing this a long time, but is as your ambitions grow and your scale grows, the issues are there. They're just multiplied, right? There's just more of them. And so that's why, one of my biggest moves I made recently was that C-suite hire, because I realized that it no longer has to be all on me. There is a certain point where there is a gap even between the best middle management that you can afford and you. And in order to get you out of the weeds of the operations, you need a really high level, high ticket operator that's a true COO, right? Chief of operations and they get it. They come in and they're like, I got it, Marco. I'm good. You're out of this. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And that's where I kind of jumped a level up, I think, because everybody's like, well, I don't know if you need it right now. I'm like, no, I need it right now because I'm done with operations. I do not want, matter of fact, I built out so much operational infrastructure because I never want to deal with a problem again. I know it's going to sound silly, but like client problems, there's an operational fix. Logistics, hiring, recruiting, all of that stuff, operational, right? So I think for me, I just bit the bullet. I was like, I don't care what it costs. We'll figure it out. Like, we'll just figure it out. But I love that the benefit you point to again, I always say, I think that a business, especially the businesses we're in, will only go as far as the leader can develop. And so the fact that you continually grow and the fact that you love that, right? You do the hard stuff. And so that's what leads you to do stuff like this. Like, you knew what you were signing up for when you did it. You chose to do it anyway, because quite honestly, guys like me and you, we get bored if we don't have those challenges, right? So what am I supposed to? My accountant said, dude, why do you want to expand? Like, you're 57. I said, what am I going to do at 57? I got to get up and I got to do something. I'm up at 4:30 every morning anyway. You know, after I work out for an hour and a half, what am I going to do? You know, so when do you think you're going to go live with Idaho?
I'm hoping early in 26, like Q1 of 26. So
nice.
Another thing, this is a gospel I preach to everybody nowadays because of the mistake I made. I've spent the last year, and this has like been a huge suck on my brain as well as my pocketbook. I've spent the last year paying off back taxes because I hired a terrible accountant a few years ago. And he just didn't pay like half the taxes, you know, and I thought they were.
Oh my God.
So unbeknownst to me, but I'm the one that gets to solve the problem. So, you know, we're fine. We've done it. I would like to have opened up Idaho, but that has taken up so much of my brain space over the last while getting that done that I haven't done it. So when you're going into and expanding from the accounting side, things get exponentially harder as well. So everything gets tougher, logistics, operations, culture, marketing, the whole bit. But the accounting side gets tough as well.
Yeah, because you have to set up a whole bunch of stuff under a new state regime that, look, I'm going to tell you something that's funny because we're kind of dealing with a lot of the same stuff. I'm dealing with scaling here and looking at the multi-state option, right? So what I'm realizing, and especially now that the COO is here, is not only do you outgrow internally certain people, like we've had a massive turnover in the last 2 years, like you also start with your vendors. What got you here, where like I would say to my vendors, stop treating me like a mom and pop, man. I need something more, but they can't get past it, right? Because they're mom and pop and they're never going to look to be multi-state operators. So what you brought up is 100% solid advice where we're meeting with every channel operationally. The vendors that are out there, we're evaluating them. And that's what they don't tell you on the EOS as well, which is the right person, right seat analysis is ongoing with regard to vendor support as well. Right. Absolutely. And that's a huge piece of advice for people. Make sure you've got the right marketing for multi-state. Make sure you got the right accounting for multi-state. And again, hopefully people can learn from your pain point because you're like me. We kind of jump in first and we figure it out. We take our lumps and we talk to people about it. But there's a lot of people like, for me, I know I won't have to make that mistake after hearing this podcast and talking to you. That's why I wanted to have you on selfishly. Like, I knew you'd tell me kind of everything behind the scenes in an hour. So one piece of advice you give anybody else, you know, looking to go into that second or third state at this point?
Have money. You have to have excess in order to do this. The only reason I've been able to make this function is because I had enough excess profit to get this thing off the ground and pay back taxes and do all this kind of stuff, right? But if you're running low margins, you're screwed. That's not going to happen for you. That is just a recipe for you going bankrupt. So if you don't have good margins right now, don't even think about it.
Okay. And I know that you and I have talked about this and you talk about it pretty publicly. I don't know. Do you ever use any kind of bank leverage stuff when you do stuff like this? Or are you straight cash?
I am cash, man.
Right.
I've never done that. Who knows? Maybe in the future we'll do that sort of thing, but I've never had a dime's worth of debt on this law firm and I'd like to keep it that way.
Yeah, I don't blame you, man. It's nice to do. I mean, what I do is I try to look for good debt that's expansion level. We had a great year last year. So the first thing I do is say, okay, if I'm going to go into another state, I just have to make sure liquidity wise, I'm in a good place because I'm also contingency based 100%. So there's going to be a lag. That lag can be easily 12 months before cash flow starts kicking in. And I don't have John Morgan's war chest, so I got to make sure I have a plan B in place.
Yep.
Listen, man, as always, great to see you. You just gave a really solid breakdown of everything that needs to happen multi-state, and I really appreciate it, man. I wish you the best of luck with Idaho and with Arizona, and thank you for coming on and doing this because I am talking to a lot of people right now, and this is part of their plan. And you kind of find yourself asking, well, where do I start? Right? Do your research. Line up your finances, know your numbers. It's all really great advice. I'm sorry you had to go through all the pain, but guys like me, we wouldn't be okay if we didn't have that level of pain because that's what drives us to now figure it out, do it better the next time. And, you're going to wake up, you're going to have a firm in a dozen states if that's what you want,
Yeah, that's true. So this is another piece of advice I think for people. If you're going to do something like this, you have to like the pain. Like you said.
Yeah, you do.
I was watching a Netflix documentary series on the Cowboys from the 90s when they were winning all the Super Bowls. And then they get to Jerry Jones, who's obviously a huge part of this. But Jerry Jones in the 2020s, and he hasn't won a Super Bowl in 25 years. And they asked him, why do you keep doing this? Well, you don't have to do the GM stuff. You don't have to do these things. And he says, because I like the pain. And I just thought, dude, that's so beautiful, right? Because you got to enjoy the pain. My life is worse when I don't have this type of pain in it. And I want it. And that means that I'm going to screw stuff up. And that's okay. I'm way more engaged when I'm screwing stuff up and fixing it than when I don't have things that are screwed up. But if you're not like that, if that's not who you are as a human being, you ought not do this. So just be honest with yourself about it.
Right. And listen, I say the same thing about even owning a law practice business where, anybody can hang a shingle, right? You could hang a shingle, you could put in your 40 to 60 hours worth of work. You got a job. To go to the level of business, it's really about what you just said, the absorption of the pain and thriving among that, because scaling requires other people. Managing people, leading people involves pain, and everybody lawyers differently. So you're in for worlds of pain you didn't know were out there. And that's what you're signing up for. Otherwise, you ought not to do this, to quote you exactly. So, my man, we can end it on that. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it, Marco. And again, I'm watching because I'm kind of following in that path. And, I just went into, like I said to the COO, I'm like, as soon as this is done, I'm going to send you the recording because this is on the slate for 2026. I'm putting it out there. My next state will be open by the end of 26.
Yeah, do it. Set a date. Pick the easiest one, even the one you don't think is going to make you the most money. That doesn't matter.
Right.
It's just what's the lowest cost, least risky option? At this point, Thomas, you're just going to jack it up, dude. You're going to screw the pooch, man.
Right.
and that's just the way it is. So just do that with as little risk as possible.
Yeah, but look, man, you got to be willing to do that. You got to be willing to do it. And I will tell you, I think that you must have a bigger plan in mind to the extent that it's no coincidence that ABS is started in Arizona. Hedge fund money is in Arizona, and hedge fund money is looking at two types of practices right now. And family law is one of them. Personal injury is the other one.
That's so funny to me because it shouldn't be where they're putting that cash. I don't think, but I'm not a hedge fund guy, right? I don't know. PI, obviously, I would take over probate and wills and estates because you can just, that stuff's just so plug and play. But I guess the money might be better in family law if you can.
Well, family law from an hourly standpoint, if you are good at business, which I know you are, when you can dictate the number of hours, it's almost a prescription, right?
A factory, yeah. Exactly.
PI is different. PI, there could be a big payoff, or you could be underwater six figures on a case because the jury came back adverse, right? The prescription for you guys, I think about it all the time. I'm like, man, I could just say, okay, you're required to do this many hours. I can literally map the entire pod out. Yep. So they're looking. I've been hearing the ruminations that they're looking, but they're looking at a specific revenue level, right? That $10 million, 5 and north will get you looked at, 10 and north gets you attention. Listen, you're a brilliant guy. I've always known you're a brilliant guy. So I wish you the best of luck with this. And, we'll talk, man. We'll talk offline about it. I'm excited for you. All right, man. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you for listening to this episode of Lead Counsel Podcast. Your host, Tom Tona. Go anywhere podcasts are distributed. Follow us. Leave us a 10-star review. Share some episodes with your friends. And thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Thank you. This episode is sponsored by TonaLaw. They're not just another law firm. They're defining what it means to fight for their clients. We get a lot of attorney referrals from across the country. We pay fee participation in all jurisdictions where it's permitted. We focus on integrity, innovation, and relentless advocacy. TonaLaw is proving that the business of law can scale without losing its heart. Do you want to see how a modern firm is built for impact and happy client referrals? Check out TonaLaw.com. Mention again the Lead Counsel Podcast, and I'm happy to get on the phone with you. This episode is brought to you by Meet Gabby, the voice AI built for law firms. Gabby answers your phones 24/7, qualifies leads, and books consultations so you never miss another client. Imagine cutting intake time in half while giving every caller a 5-star experience. That's the power of Meet Gabby. Learn more at meetgabby.com. Mention the Lead Counsel Podcast. You can also hit me up, and I'm glad to make an introduction to the owner.